Hello and welcome to Freshly Served Healthy Vegan Recipes. I'm Heather and today we're going to make a Moroccan chickpea stew. You can find the recipe for this over at healthyveganrecipes.net. And if any of you have been following my blog this week over on my nutrition website, which is healthyeatingstartshere.com, I've been talking a lot about spices, herbs, and the use of salt in cooking. So today the recipe involves quite a bit of spices. And in the directions, I've mentioned that you can replace most of the spices with an Indian spice mix plus some cinnamon. If you don't want to buy the individual spices, if you don't have them, it can get expensive to buy all the different spices. But I like to use the individual ones because it gives me more control over the flavors in the dish. So what we're going to start with is sauteing some onions and ginger. So I'm going to get those going in a small pan. And then I'm going to use a slow cooker today, although you could also do this in a soup pot and then get the whole thing going at once. So either a small pan and then into a slow cooker, or saute the onions and ginger in a soup pot. So you just want the onions to soften up a little bit. They don't need to brown, they just need to get a little bit translucent, which means you can kind of see through them. Then we're going to throw in the ginger. And the reason we saute these vegetables before putting them into the crock pot or into the soup is that they cook very differently when they're in liquid. The flavor gets so much more diluted once it gets into the liquid. And when you saute the vegetables, it concentrates their flavor. So we do that first to concentrate the flavor. Then they go into the soup where some of their flavor goes into the liquid, but they still keep some of their distinct flavors. Kind of losing control of my language here, but that's okay. So we start with the onions and the ginger because they have pretty sharp flavors and they take the longest to cook. Then we go with the next longest cooking, which is the carrots. And I'm actually just going to throw the carrots and the zucchini in together here. And all I'm looking for is for them to get a little bit of moisture on the outside, so they're kind of sweating. Puts a little pot in the pan so they sweat. Carrots are pretty cool because they get to be an even more vibrant shade of orange when they just barely warm up. So you're gonna look for that, and then the next thing we'll do is add the spices, and I'm gonna use some cumin, some turmeric, some paprika. You can also use cayenne here if you prefer. Cayenne is much spicier than paprika, so be cautious with it. So a little bit too much for me. There we go. And in the directions I've mentioned, those three spices can be replaced by your favorite Indian or curry mix if you prefer, but the special unique addition to this recipe is cinnamon. Sorry, I have the screen that I'm looking at upside down. It makes things very interesting for trying to see what's going on camera. It's kind of like when you try to do things in a mirror. Sometimes you do them backwards. So we're going to stir the spices through the vegetables. The reason we do this is so that the spices get infused into the oil. There's just a little bit of oil that I've used to saute these vegetables. And if the spices get infused into that, they will also retain their flavor once they go into the liquid in the soup or the stew. And so they carry more of their distinctness with them. Distinctness a word? I don't know. Uniqueness. Uniquity. I've just been playing Scrabble, so I've kind of got words on the brain right now. Okay, I've got some chickpeas in my crock pot, if you can see them there, along with some water. And then I will add a can of diced tomatoes. You can also use whole tomatoes. I sometimes do that if I can't find dice that are organic, and then you can just like mush them up with a spoon or something. They often come with some thicker juice with them as well, so that kind of makes things interesting. Okay, next is I'm gonna add some saffron here, and this is totally optional, but I just wanted to show you since Phil and I were traveling in Turkey and I picked up some saffron for his mom who loves to use it. They say it's the most expensive spice in the world, and it was pretty cheap there, so I picked up a whole bunch. Now with saffron, you need to soften it with some water first. So what you do is you take it in a little bowl and add a little bit of boiling water, or very hot water, not quite boiling, and just let it soften so that they expand a little bit. For those of you who haven't seen it before, there's what they look like, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of water here and let them soften. Then I'll add this whole thing to the pot. But next up, I'm going to add those vegetables that I sauteed and added spices to. Get them all in there. You may want to make sure that you have a big enough pot for all of this deliciousness. Then I have some chopped apple. You can also use pear. I was actually going to use pear, but I accidentally ate the last pear for breakfast, so that's what happens when you don't pay attention. I'm also going to put in some dried apricots. These ones are really, really dark for some reason. They almost look like dates, and dates would actually be another excellent choice here as well, or raisins. Then I'm going to zest and juice a lemon. So here is a zester, and what you do is just peel off the very outer part of the lemon. And this is going to add some really nice flavor to this dish. Lemons are often used in Moroccan dishes, so very appropriate, and I always take an excuse to use citrus zest and juice whenever I can. And I was just talking about zesters today with my mom and Phil's mom, and they were mentioning that none of their friends actually have zesters. And I said that in every video that I zest, I suggest that people pick one up because they're pretty cheap. You can find them at thrift stores usually, but even in stores, normal stores, you can find new ones for pretty cheap. And they do such a great job. You can also grate the outside of the lemon, but it doesn't work quite as well. You usually have to be really careful not to get any of this white part. That's the pith. It's very bitter. You don't want that. Then you chop your lemon in half. Use a strainer, or you can juice this in a juicer, but I just put a strainer over my pot, poke it with the zester, and squeeze out the juice. Hopefully you don't squirt half your lemon across the kitchen. Alright, with everything in there, we'll throw in this saffron, which again is totally optional. Because we have an actual jar full of saffron over here, which is totally unheard of, we've become a bit of saffron-holics. And last but certainly not least, some pepper. However much for as little as you like, and some salt. And I've got a blog about salt as well as the herbs and spices over at healthyeatingstartshere.com. Go check it out if you're concerned about salt intake. Stir that all together, and if this is in a soup pot, you're gonna bring it to a boil and then turn it down to simmer for half an hour. And if you're making this in a slow cooker, turn the slow cooker on to high to get it to a simmer, and then you can leave it kind of as long as you want. But the chickpeas will expand a little bit, even though they're cooked. They'll still expand a little bit if you let them. So if you leave this for too long, they'll start to fall apart a little bit. So I'd recommend anywhere from 2 to 4 hours to leave this going. And then the last thing you'll do right before you serve is stir in some fresh parsley, or mint is excellent in this dish. So if you can find some fresh mint, go for it. And then sprinkle a few sesame seeds on top if you like. And you will have a wonderful healthy and hearty chickpea stew to warm you up on a cold winter night. Hope you enjoy this. You can find the recipe at healthyveganrecipes.net. And I'm Heather. This is Freshly Served.